another video of the pulsating biology for the Olevels 5090 course. This is the lecture 2 of the chapter diffusion and the osmosis. And in the lecture 2, we will be covering some of the pointers that were in the syllabus. We've already discussed the syllabus in the last video. We shall be discussing the chapter's name, that is the diffusion and the osmosis itself in this video mainly. Let's start with the term diffusion and let's learn what does the diffusion mean. Well, if you talk about the verbal explanation of the diffusion, it says that the diffusion is basically defined as the movement of particles from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration, to the region of lower concentration along the concentration gradient. Now, the important term that is in this nation is the concentration gradient, which is very important to understand that what is meant by the concentration gradient. Well, the concentration gradient means that, for example, there is a steep graph for any diffusing purpose, and in the concentration gradient in that plays a role of the neutralizing the factors that the concentration has. So for the concentration gradient, it basically sets up a bar up to which the diffusion can take place. The diffusion that occurs from a higher concentration to the lower concentration means that where the molecules are larger in number, it diffuses from that place to the one that are where they are lower in number. The very common example that we often have noticed for the term diffusion, that is whenever you spray in the spray of perfume in the room, it basically the molecule spreads around the room and everybody can smell it. Another very common example of diffusion is, let's say, on the stove, your mom is cooking some yum food and the smell of that yum food is basically traveling to your nose, through which you get to know that which food is basically being cooked. So this is a very common example of diffusion. Diffusion is a very commonly used term for the in our real life as well, that basically tells us that how the movement of molecules take place from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration, but with regard to the concentration gradient. All right, it includes the number of solute that we term as the molecules, and the term diffusion does not involve solvent, whereas osmosis does involve the term solvent. Let's learn about what is meant by osmosis. The osmosis does not deal with the concentration gradient, basically. It means how the movement of water molecules take place. The important term in the definition of osmosis is basically the water molecule. One is the water molecule. The definition is quite similar, that the osmosis also takes place from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration, but by the partially permeable membrane. Now, what is meant by the partially permeable membrane? Please do remember that don't use the term semi-permeable. Instead of that, use partially permeable. We do not use in the O levels, we do not use the term semi-permeable. Partially permeable is the correct term. And what is meant by the partially permeable? It means that some amount of the solute can pass through it, not all of them. So osmosis is basically the movement of water molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration, just with the help of partially permeable membrane. That means not all the solute can pass through that membrane. There's a certain amount of solute, so there are certain considerable solute that basically pass from that. Let's take an example of osmosis. Well, for osmosis, let's draw a diagram that basically will be very helpful for us. Let's say this diagram that tells us there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's some number of molecules that are in this region, and then there are some number of molecules that are in this region. Let's count the number of molecules that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are 12 number of molecules in this region, and there are approx 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 number of molecules. So here are double of the molecules that are present in this region. That means that this is a high concentration area, well, this is a lower concentration area. Now, what does in the term or in the condition for the osmosis, what will happen? Will be it moving from the region of higher concentration to lower, or the lower to higher? Well, it'll be moving from lower to higher to lower concentration but through a partially permeable membrane. The one that is drawn with the the black pen, that tells that this is basically a partially permeable membrane, which allows certain solutes to pass through it. It also contains the solvent, and these molecules are termed as the solute, that basically are the water solutes that pass from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration across the term partially permeable membrane. As there are number of, how do we know that which is the higher concentration? The one with a more number of solutes are basically higher concentration. This site contains 12 molecules and this site contains 6 molecules. Thus, this is a higher concentrated area than this. So this is what is the example of osmosis, that tells us the movement of water molecules from the region of high concentration to lower concentration across the partially permeable membrane. Let's discuss about the factors of diffusion in detail. Since we have discussed about the diffusion itself earlier, let's discuss about the factors. There are approximately 4 major factors of diffusion. Number one factor is the surface area. How the surface area is related to the diffusion? Then we have the temperature. Temperature also plays a very important role when it comes to the diffusion. Then we have the concentration gradient. And the fourth we have is the distance. I'll make one diagram with the help of which you will be able to understand all of the factors of the diffusion. Let's make a diagram that says we'll make a comparison of two of them. Let's say this is diagram number 1 and this is diagram number 2. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 molecules, and we have 1, 2, 3 molecules over here. This diagram, let's name it as this is the steep, or this is also the steep. All right. So we have the steeper side of the diagram, and we have these is the number of molecules that we have. This is the number of molecules. Let's discuss about the distance first. All right. When it comes to the distance, distance is directly proportional to the diffusion. The distance is directly proportional to the diffusion. Inversely proportional. The distance is inversely proportional to the diffusion. The more the distance, the lesser would be the diffusion. Let's say in this diagram, when a molecule shifts from this to the steepest side, since the distance is more, and in this diagram, the distance is less, thus the diffusion that will take place here would take it longer for the molecule to reach till the end and be diffused, whereas on this side, the molecule shall reach the ground faster and the diffusion may take place in a more faster way. Similar goes with the concentration gradient. The concentration gradient is also inversely proportional to the diffusion. And what does inversely proportional mean? It means when the diffusion, the rate of diffusion will decrease with the amount of increase in the concentration gradient. Since the concentration gradient means that the amount of steeper the slope is. So this slope is more steeper, that means the concentration gradient will be less. And in this diagram, since it is less steeper, the concentration gradient will be more. What about the temperature? Temperature depends upon the many factors. Basically, it depends on the kinetic energy of the molecule, the vigorous movement of the molecules. Then it also depends upon the movement of molecules and the threshold energy, and the amount means the amount of energy that the molecules control. So, how do we understand the temperature with regard to the surface area? Let's say there is a larger surface area and there is less surface area, and we have the number of molecules here. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here we have 2 of them. Which of them will be diffused faster? Obviously, the one with the less number of molecules rather than the one with the more number of molecules. If we have a greater surface area, that means we have no more number of molecules. When there are more number of molecules, they shall take more amount of time in order to be diffused. Whereas the less molecules means that the less molecules can be diffused in at the rate faster than the one with the more number of molecules. When the temperature increases, the movement of molecules increases. Thus, it becomes more diffusible. When the temperature decreases, the number of molecules movement also decreases. Thus, it is not very easy for them to be diffused. This is how these factors depend on the diffusion, the surface area, temperature, concentration gradient, and the rate of diffusion. By this deep dive, now you can